So there's been a lot going on in the last couple of months. I think I last joined you all in October. COVID and safety really remains our top priority that we've been working on. There's a new COVID center I'll make sure you are all aware of and can continue sharing with neighbors. That's at 926 F Street Northwest. And this COVID center provides testing, provides vaccines, provides boosters, both PCR and rapid at-home tests. And so it's a great resource for folks to make sure to go visit that and to share with people who are in need of any of those resources. We are still have a long way to go to make sure we're getting more testing and COVID safety resources to our school communities and our seniors in particular. We've been pushing for additional options for testing so that people with various work schedules can go pick up tests at their leisure, because the traditional business hours Monday through Friday, of course, do not work for everybody. And so that's something we continue to push the executive on. We have a continued major focus on getting our neighbors experiencing homelessness housed, and all of the vouchers that became available October 1st this year, of those 1/3 have been matched with participants, but we have a long way to go to make sure that the remaining 2/3 are matched in appropriate housing, and then people are placed into housing. So we'll be working very closely with DHS and DMHHS and DCHA in the next couple of months to see how we can expedite this process even further. And just for your all awareness, one of the pieces that we put in the Budget Support Act this summer was a mandatory revamping of the rules that DCHA has to overview and review is the word I'm looking for, review these applications so that paperwork and where somebody may have lived 10 years ago isn't the reason someone's not getting housing. And so those emergency rules were just promulgated actually last week. And so there's a public comment period now. And we're hoping that by this spring, that will be one less hurdle to overcome in getting people placed into appropriate housing. Public safety continues to be a huge concern that we hear about and we feel ourselves daily. And we are working with all of our partners from our Metropolitan Police Department, ONE's office, the courts, our prosecutors' offices, and the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice about bringing more resources to Ward 2 to build safer communities. And one of the things I want to share with you all too is that we recently had a meeting with the building blocks director, and she is considering expanding to have more violence prevention and interruption work in every ward, including Ward 2, particularly in areas that we have seen an increase in violence and an increase in crime this year. We have just finished the redistricting process. You all know this. We just welcomed 12,000 new residents into Ward 2, which is extremely exciting. So we now have all of Shaw as part of Ward 2. We were lucky not to lose too many other neighborhoods. Unfortunately, we did lose about 2,000 residents in Judiciary Square. And so we are very sad to lose those neighbors. But one of the things we said throughout the process was we want to keep all of our neighborhoods together and we'd welcome new neighbors into Ward 2. And that was mostly true. And so I know that'll be a focus of the Ward 2 Democrats moving forward, in our office looks forward to being a partner with you all in that work and welcoming our new Shaw neighbors into Ward 2 and getting to know them and having them get to know these organizations so we can keep building a strong as possible democracy. I know Austin will speak later about the ANC Redistricting Task Force, but just want to thank him so much for taking on that huge role as the chair of the ANC Redistricting Task Force. It is like many things that are important and time consuming, can be thankless and exhausting, I'm sure. And so I just really appreciate Austin taking on that big responsibility that I know is important to all of us. What else do I want to tell you all here? We are currently in the middle of performance oversight hearings for our agencies, which is really important to make sure that we are working together with the agencies and also holding them accountable. So we've had a number of performance oversight hearings already, Department of Behavioral Health, rec fairs and DGS coming up and DDOT and all of these important agencies. And so if concerns arise, please reach out to me or my team so we can make sure to include your questions in our testimony and in our ability to ask these agency directors questions so that they could be operating as efficiently as possible. I want to speak briefly about two pieces of legislation that I want on all of your radar, and I hope you can support. One is the Recovery Act, and this is really aimed at reimagining some of our space, particularly downtown. We saw throughout the pandemic that we need resilient communities. In the Golden Triangle, for example, there are only 39 residents who live there. And so all of the businesses and all of the restaurants that were there really struggled if DOC didn't close down because they were so reliant on the foot traffic of the office workers and people coming to the Golden Triangle. And so we learned, and we know now, that to build a resilient community and neighborhood, we have to have mixed uses. We have to have people living there and traveling there and working there, transportation and grocery stores, all of these great things that we know build strong communities, which we have downtown, but we are lacking the people and the residents. And so the Recovery Act really aims to incentivize conversions and reimagining some of these spaces. So one of the things it does is for advancing affordable housing options and residential housing downtown. So it provides a tax abatement for the conversion of vacant office spaces into residential housing, so long as a portion of that housing, 20%, is affordable. There are other incentives that we tied to various uses. So for building to convert to a hotel, they have to engage in project labor agreements and other negotiation strategies that will support the unions. And so we tried to include a lot of pieces in this bill that will encourage these uses that we know will build a resilient community in a way that will incentivize the property owners to play ball and do this with us. And so we're hoping to have a hearing on that act very soon. Hope some of you will testify and really welcome your thoughts on how to make it stronger as we go through the hearing and markup process. The second piece of legislation I want to share with you is the expanding student access to period products. This was actually just passed by the council, and it requires all public, charter, private, and post-secondary institutions to provide free period products in all women's and gender-neutral bathrooms. And it also requires OSSI to update menstrual education standards to be taught to all students beginning in 4th grade. Because one of the things we found was that many young boys at our DC schools were not being taught about periods and never knew about them really until much later through conversations with friends or family or loved ones, and it really needs to be a part of the curriculum. We think this is just a basic, and we know it's a basic health necessity for half of the population, and we're really excited that this was passed and this can be implemented right away in our schools, and are continuing to look to go further to make sure that these products are provided for free for our residents in the same way we provide toilet paper for our residents in public spaces. And so that's something that we're really, we really think is important and are looking forward to expand moving forward. Lastly, a little update on the budget, which I cannot believe because I feel like we all just finished last year's budget because we did. As you know, it was pushed back later because we were waiting on the guidelines from the Treasury Department last year. And so we're now back on a regular budget schedule. So the mayor is currently deliberating with her cabinet, coming up with her proposed budget. We just had our Ward 2 Budget Community Forum last week. So thank you so much to those of you who came and testified or watched or participated or have been emailing our team with priorities. That is extremely helpful. That's how we got a lot of our Ward 2 priorities funded last year, was partnership with you all and moving things forward that way. And so next week, I'll be sending our Ward 2 budget priorities letter, which we'll be sharing publicly with the mayor, which will list our major operating and capital budget requests. and we'll be meeting with the mayor and advocating and championing on behalf of these projects. And then she will send to the council her proposed budget on March 16th. After that time, we have 70 days as a council to go through the budget. So we are going to be having budget hearings on all of the agencies, thinking through who needs more funding, who needs less funding, who needs additional support for various projects, how can we do things better and more efficiently. And then the budget will again go through the committee process at the council, and we will be voting on the full budget this July. And so really hope that especially this group of leaders will be involved and engaged in the budget process as we move forward. It's going to be an intense couple of months, but hopefully we'll be able to stand together and get a lot done that is so needed for Ward 2. If you haven't done so already and you have budget ideas or priorities, please send them to Ella Hansen on my team, who is here. Ella, if you could put your email in the chat. Oh, she already beat me to it. She's so good. That would be great, so we can hear directly from you. So I will stop there. Really just happy with all of the partnership and collaboration we've already had over the course of the last year, and looking forward to a productive, hopefully warmer, hopefully a lower COVID rates soon, and healthy year together. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Council Member. We're running way ahead of time, remarkably. But if there are any questions right now, specifically on the topics that the Council Member mentioned, feel free to post them in the chat. And if not, then we can move on to our next guest, Austin Naughton. Familiar face to all of us here, obviously, as the former chair of this organization. But I think it's good to have both he and the council member on here tonight because of
Juan, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Several folks have their hand raised.
Here we go. There we go. Just saw that. Thank you very much. All right. So who am I seeing first here? Monica.
Councilmember Pinto, I just wanted to say I really love the idea of repurposing downtown. I mean, it's really sad. It's just like an apocalypse hit, you know, when you go down there during prime time of the day. So anything I can do to support, or we can do as the Ward 2 Dems to support your efforts on that, I would love to help with that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I think right now, one of the biggest things that we need to do is advocate to our at-large council members to make sure. I think everybody knows in theory that downtown needs some support, but I think it'll be important for our at-large council members to hear directly from their constituents that this is a priority to them and that it's really important for our city.
Okay. So
you can add me to that too. Good idea.
Maybe we can talk about it in our exec meeting that's happening next. Something
Sure.
we can do. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Monica.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Monica. Next hand raised I see is Ruth. Ruth, you're still muted.
Okay, you should hear me now, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I have a couple questions. In terms of priorities, I really am a bus traveler, frequent bus traveler, and the bus service has really, fallen apart from what I've experienced. And I find the metro actually operating at, sort of when they say they're going to operate in much more efficiently than the bus, which I take and takes me to more places in DC than the metro does. And I'm wondering and I understand that the buses actually have more people in them, more people have returned than have returned to the metro. So I'm curious what's going to be done to improve bus service in DC. And second question, I only have two questions. I'm really in favor of the mayor's new masking vaccination, proclamation in terms of what happens when you're inside public spaces. And I'm wondering two things. Why Councilmember Pinto didn't sign on to the letter that basically most council members did, but when she rescinded her mask mandate. And I'm concerned about Ted Cruz's efforts to rescind mask mandates in DC school.
Sure. Well, thanks so much, Ruth. Really good questions. So in terms of the bus routes, I share your huge concern. Service lines have been cut. People have been waiting for 20, 40, sometimes 60 minutes for their general bus to arrive.
Me too, yes.
It's been, really unacceptable. So a couple of things. First, WMATA just promulgated their proposed fiscal year 2023 budget proposal. And so this is a really important time. And I did this last year with WMATA and testified on behalf of Ward 2 to make sure that our bus routes are maintained and not cut in next year's budget. And so if there is a link, Ella, if there's a public comment notice, if we can put that in the chat, that would be great. And then I'll make sure to provide testimony to them as well to make sure that our routes are not cut. The second piece is me and some of my colleagues have been asking WMATA and the executive for a more robust response about what's currently happening and how we can add more service lines and account for the fact that, like all agencies, a lot of bus drivers are out with COVID. And that's been one of the major challenges is around staffing and the immediate changes that happen when 40 or 50% of a workforce is not showing up to work. And so the executive had told us last Friday that they would get back to us this week with a written response about a more robust plan. But I hear you and I agree we will continue to push the executive and WMATA because so many of us rely on these bus routes and we need them to be consistent. And if we need to have more of a pipeline of trained drivers ready to go in the event of emergencies, like an additional variant that has plagued us this month, then that's something that we need to explore. In terms of the vaccine, the indoor mask mandate, there was initially a conversation in October about lifting the mask mandate indoors. I thought, frankly, at the time that was a fine path forward. We were in a completely different place in October. I now have evolved in that thinking with the variant, and I now think it is extremely important to have our indoor mask mandate in place. I think that the vaccine requirements for businesses and gyms and other places and schools, I have supported all of those measures and will continue to support those. People like Ted Cruz kind of suggesting that they are going to in some way prevent us from doing that, I think it's a lot of noise. I don't think that it has any weight to it. I don't think that even if it were to be brought for a vote, that they would have the vote to have any impact on our city. So I'm trying not to let comments like that distract us from keeping district residents safe. But I agree, it's very concerning when people outside of our city try to claim that they know better than us and our public health experts, which have been lauded really across the country for the COVID mitigation efforts that they've been engaged in.
Thank you, Council Member. Excellent questions. Really appreciate that. I know we only have the Council Member for another 5 minutes. So I want to make sure that I get the next two individuals in to ask their questions. Mr. Marks, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for holding this meeting tonight. And again, I salute Councilperson Member Pinto for the job that she's doing. It's phenomenal. I want to talk a little bit about the efforts to defund the police. And we that live here in Chinatown every day are faced with problems dealing with crime. And I've talked to the First District Commander, Ralph McLean. He's explained to me that the number of officers in the First District, Police District, has been scaled back because of efforts to reduce funding to the Metropolitan Police. Now, Councilwoman Pinto, will you support the budget that's put forward by Chief Conte and Mayor Bowser on funding for the police? Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for your question, Howard. And thank you also to Howard and Monica Roche, who I should have mentioned are both serving on our ANC task force. So thanks for your continued involvement. So, public safety and crime that we've seen is a huge concern. I hear about it every day from residents. I see it every day. I see it in Chinatown. No, I don't support defunding the police. I think that there are a number of things that we will continue working on that we know are important. We increased out of school time investments by 25% last year. We'll hope to do that again this year and continue to see our young people exposed to additional avenues for opportunity. We have major investments in workforce opportunities. We have major investments in violence interruption. Our support for our returning citizens to reduce our recidivism rates are extremely important. And so all of those pieces I will continue to support to build a robust, safe community. But our police are an important part of the toolkit to keep our community safe. And I'm grateful for our police officers who put their lives on the line every day to keep us safe. One of the things that I've been working on over the course of the last couple of months is figuring out where the gap is in some of these repeat cases. So when I speak to our officers and our commanders, one of the things I hear about is a frustration around, we've made an arrest 4 or 5 or 6 times of the same person of a very similar crime. And so where is the hole? Because that's not a matter of the police. So where on the line are we getting this wrong? And so when we looked at the data, the Office of the Attorney General and the U.S. Attorney's Office are making these prosecutions, making these cases. And I know I only have a minute or so. This could be a full 2-hour discussion, but basically my step moving forward is about the rehabilitative services component, because DC has a very robust system of rehabilitative services. Sometimes it includes some jail time. Sometimes for our young people, that might be a small amount of time, like 30 or 60 days. And then a robust slew of rehabilitative services, including supervision to make sure that a young person doesn't recidivate and commit another crime and that they're connected to additional services. The federal system doesn't have nearly as much of a robust system as our DC system does. But because we're not a state, so many of these cases are being pushed into the federal system. And so many of those same judges are saying, well, they're going to the federal system, but they shouldn't really be sent, to jail or prison across the country for years and years. So they're going to be released. And that is just a really dangerous coupling of events, when really, especially when so many of these incidents of crime are being committed by our young people, that's the exact time we need to be wrapping our arms around them and exposing them to all of these services that we have available in DC that are not available in the federal system. So that's a long way of saying that is not going to solve all of this. Every city in the country and the world is dealing with this right now with a major increase in crime. But that is one of the areas that my team and I are focusing on this spring, is to try to get that piece of it more right, for lack of a better term, to try to reduce some of these instances of crime that I know are so concerning to all of us.
Thank you.
Councilman.
And thank you, Mr. Marks, for the question. Councilmember, I see it's 7:30. I know you have another engagement immediately after this. I have, from the look of it, one more question. If you have the time to spare, we can have it asked now, or if not, I'll make sure to relay it to your office.
Sure, no, of course, go ahead.
Okay. Marieva?
You want Marietta to talk? Hi, Congresswoman, Councilwoman Pinto. I just wanted to highlight repopulating Ward 2 and the really downtown area, and how vital that is to the entire city. As you said, we've got to get the at-large members involved, but can you embellish on what your position is, and just briefly on renovating office buildings for low-income housing?
Sure. So I'm trying to think about how I can do this in as short a version as possible. So what it turns out to be with a lot of these property owners is a math equation.
Yeah.
So if we say to a property owner, hi, you have a building complete with vacant office spaces, which are clearly not being leased up at the moment. We want you to turn that building into affordable housing. They're going to look at their numbers for conversion and say, okay, to do that is going to cost us X, which is much more than we would ever make from those units. And so you as the city, in order to incentivize us to do that, are going to have to pay X times 20. So what we've aimed to do in the Recovery Act is try to get that equation right, to say, okay, we want to incentivize conversion at a level that is going to pay the property owner just enough to do it. We don't want to overpay in any way, but at an affordability level that is the highest we can go while still making it financially feasible for them. And so that's ultimately where we came up with the numbers of 20% of the units that are going to be converted to residential have to be affordable at 80% area median income, to try to tackle the dearth of workforce housing downtown. We absolutely need additional opportunities for more affordable housing downtown, for deeply affordable housing downtown. And we're looking at other tools in partnership with the Deputy Mayor for Business and Economic Development's office to convert some additional buildings through other financing avenues. But for the Recovery Act, that's where we put the limit on. I'm seeing some faces. I'm not sure if I explained that very clearly. But that's one of the tools that we're using to try to make sure that affordable housing is included in our goal to bring physical people downtown, which the people themselves at all income levels are extremely important to be downtown, so that they can support our transportation systems, our small businesses, and everything else that needs support.
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't mean just affordable, but enough affordable, and also to bring lower middle class and middle class people back. And so in that mathematical equation, you are including the loss of not having anybody in the building. What I mean is these owners, should factor in the fact that nobody's there and may never come back unless we do this, But I know you've figured that out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, it's a really good point. It's a great point. All right.
That's good. Thank you very much. Councilmember, I appreciate your time. I'll owe you 5 minutes the next time.
Well, don't worry about it. Wonderful to be here with you all. And I always get in trouble when I start to do this because I miss one name, but I just want to also note that I see Alistair Chang on here, our wonderful Ward 2 State Board of Ed rep, who's doing a fantastic job. And Commissioner Miller, who I got to be with today for Takeout Tuesday. So hope you'll share with everybody, Commissioner Miller, about that important program to make sure we support our restaurants every day, but especially on Tuesdays when a lot of restaurants have a lull in people dining out or ordering in. And so Georgetown Main Streets and Commissioner Miller was supporting at Peacock Cafe and Chaya in Georgetown today. I had a delicious meal from there myself, and hope you all stay healthy. Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone, for the excellent questions. I appreciate the dialogue. Hopefully this will be the first of many. In the interest of time, and to follow in our former chair's footsteps of being timely, I introduce Austin Naughton in his capacity as chair of the Ward 2 ANC Redistricting Task Force.
Sure.
Austin.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me well?
Excellent.
Yes. Okay. So I believe that 10 minutes is the allotted time because this meeting ends then. Is that correct, Juan?
Approximately 10, 15
Okay.
minutes. Yeah.
Great. So I'm going to err on the side of short and sweet to allow for any discussion. What I have done is I've put links in the chat of the process being used by the Redistricting Task Force. And this way you can use those as references. If you joined after I put those links, hopefully they can be able to be shared as well. But the overall point about this is that on April 1st, right, someone had a good sense of humor to make April Fool's Day the due date for the report of all 8 wards. All 8 wards, each ward has a task force. And within that task force, for us, we have a representative from each of the current advisory neighborhood commissions. So I'll be using ANC going forward for that, of the Ward 2 ANCs, plus the part of the Ward 6 ANCs that are coming back into Ward 2. So what we need to do is balance the numbers of the single member districts within each advisory neighborhood commission. So my apologies to anyone who isn't familiar with this jargon. Hopefully you can catch up with what's in the links, but I know from many of the people on this call that you're very familiar with this. As Councilmember Pinto mentioned, Monica Roche and James Harnett, who are part of this body here tonight, are also part of this task force, as is Howard Marks, representing the neighborhoods that they're based in. So we've had one task force meeting so far. That was on January 16th. These meetings are open to the public. And then the next one is 2 nights from now, Thursday at 6:45, at which time we're going to be deciding how many more meetings are we going to have. At least one ward has decided to schedule a meeting for every week from now through the end of March. Other wards have scheduled meetings for half of those amounts. So I polled all of the task force members to see what their availability is, and we're going to be deciding that at the next meeting. As I mentioned, these are public meetings, so my hope is that this doesn't need to be a controversial process. There was somebody today who was telling me 10 years ago there were people who were very heated around this topic. A big part of it is a numbers game. The ideal that's being put forth from council is that we need to have single member districts of 2,000 people. It could be a little bit less of 1,900 or a little bit more going up to 2,100. So right now, because of the growth in Ward 2 populations, many of the single member districts have too many people. A few of them have too few people. So we have to figure out what then happens with the boundaries of the single member districts and the boundaries of the advisory neighborhood commissions. So that is the work of the task force. By April 1st, we need to submit a report to the council, and then the council will be holding at least 9 hearings in a process that mirrors the redistricting of the wards process that just happened over the last few months. So at this point, I am going to stop talking and turn it back over to Juan.
Thank you, Austin. Like I said before, raise your hand if you have a question or place it in the chat. So Austin, with this process, oh, here we go. Susie has a question.
Go ahead.
Austin, can you repeat that? What happens? April 1st, this task force gives their report to whom now again?
We submit to the council.
and then they review it, and then what happens? Do they make changes to the suggestion from the task force?
Yeah, they will have hearings. That is up to them. So what I'm going to do, I'll show you. Right, I'm just going to put a link right here. It's I'm reposting the link. It explains the process. This is being overseen by the Redistricting Subcommittee of the Council that is chaired by Alyssa Silverman. And then there are two of the other at-large council members who are also doing the ward redistricting. And so, Susie, if you go onto that link that I just posted in the chat, that contains the process.
Okay. Can you include me in your task force?
I don't control the task force. The task force was appointed by through Councilmember Pinto's office, and then at-large council members had the option to appoint as well.
Okay.
So I'm an appointee. I don't put people on the task force.
Because I did submit a request with Pinto, but anyway.
Okay. So then I would just for anyone who's interested, I would suggest you contact her office. Genevieve Hulick is her chief of staff, and she is our contact person from that staff.
Great, thank you, Austin. It's not an easy job, to say the least. You may not be able to answer this, but just generally, given that we've added approximately 12,000 new residents, do you see, do you think it's going to be more a rejiggering of the boundaries, or do you anticipate that we're going to be increasing the number of single member districts?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I welcome you to come to our next meeting on Thursday night. And you could, I really don't know. So for example, questions come up is what happens with the ANC that's coming back in, or I should say the single member districts. There's 4 of them that are in the Shaw area. Do they come in fully as their own ANC? Or do they align with the Logan Shaw neighborhood ANC? Do they connect with the Penn Quarter ANC? We don't know those answers. It will be based upon what is decided around the sizes of the single member districts. Going to the other side of the ward would be in the Colorama Sheridan neighborhoods. They have 2 ANC commissioners, 2 single member districts, and both of them are well below the thresholds. They're both around 1,400 or 1,500 people. So they need to take in hundreds of more people in order to achieve the numbers that are set forth in DC code. And Walter, I see you nodding your head because I think that is your zone. My role as the task force chair is to be listening to what the different representatives on the task force are hearing and expressing to me, and to be trying to just keep the process moving as smoothly as possible. I view this as like a group project that's due in a few months, or like less than 2 months, pretty much, and that we just have to all get along and work well together to have a finished product.
Thank you.
A quick question. Did I read correctly? The wards themselves are established, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those borders are established. We're talking about what's happening within them.
Correct. Yeah. So for example, Bill, where you live down in Penn Quarter, right? Your ANC is going to change a little bit because as Councilmember Pinto mentioned, that a few thousand people from the downtown ANC of Ward 2 have moved to Ward 6.
But we'll still be in 2.
No, you may be, but part of your neighborhood is now going to be part of Ward 6. So there are going to be changes of the lines. So the ward lines have changed in some places, and that will impact what happens with the numbers of the single member districts.
I just think it's ironic. I mean, Shaw used to be in Ward 2 years ago, full. I mean, the whole full Shaw. And now, now they're brought back. So, but they've changed a lot, and the ward has changed a lot. So,
Correct. Yeah, you're
it's not-
absolutely right. And these are the types of questions that come up in terms of the diversity that has changed a lot just in my 10 years in the neighborhood. I live right on the border of Logan Shaw, and there's just been dramatic changes in the scale of the buildings that are over in the side of the neighborhood. City Center wasn't here when we moved in. So these immediate areas have changed a lot, and that's why we have to go through this process. It's exciting, right? So I hope you're hearing some enthusiasm and excitement for doing this. And they're very passionate people are involved, and I just see it as a great opportunity to address the changes that are happening in this dynamic ward.
Well, Austin, we appreciate your efforts on that, on undertaking that. I know it's somewhat of a thankless task, but if you've come to these meetings before, particularly under Austin's chairmanship, the meetings will start and end on time. So that's a huge plus, in my opinion.
I'm taking the hint, right? I'm taking the hint right now. So sure, I mean, what I'm trying to emphasize to people is pretty much everything is above our pay grade because we are volunteers, right? So as volunteers, we need to treat each other respectfully, and we should expect the same of people who are engaging with us around this process, because we are all donating our time to try and make our neighborhoods even better. And that's how I expect to engage with others in this process. And I feel similarly around how we deal in politics.
Yeah.
So happy to take other questions. Folks can contact me offline. I'll put my email address in here, but mainly we're having the public meeting Thursday night, starting at 6:45. Please feel free to come, tell your neighbors about it. I've included the information about that in the link.
Yeah. And the information to that meeting is also on the ward2democrats.org website on the calendar section. So feel free to go there as well. As a side note, so as chair of the Ward 2 Democrats, I routinely meet with the other chairs of the other ward organizations. So Ward 6 has undertaken they're going to be hosting a special general meeting in conjunction. They've invited myself and the representatives, the chairs from Ward 7 and 8. It's kind of a welcome to the ward event. So basically all those different wards that had border changes, we're kind of all getting together and kind of welcoming, those former Ward 6 folks to Ward 2. I will be sending out information on that general meeting. It's going to be more of an informal event, but Ward 6 says that the Ward 2 members are welcome to come and attend and welcome their new Ward 2 neighbors. So I think it'll be a good opportunity to engage our new neighbors, let them know what Ward 2 is about, and demonstrate the camaraderie that I'm so familiar with after 15 years in the ward. With that, if no one else has any questions for Austin, I will give him back a few minutes. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. With that, the public portion of this meeting is concluded. As I said, we're going to be going into a executive session shortly to discuss a number of agenda items. I'll be filling you all in, particularly via email, but most importantly, so that you are all aware, we are attempting to host some candidate forums. That's one of the primary reasons for the meeting, executive meeting tonight. But we'll be deciding what forums we're going to host, try to determine when. It's a little bit challenging because most, if not all, the ward organizations are going to be hosting something. So finding a date that works is a little challenging because, of course, everyone's vying for the mayoral candidates at large, the attorney general candidates, et cetera, et cetera. But I will be sure to inform all of you of our progress and more importantly, of the date of our February meeting. So with that, if there are no questions, comments, or concerns, I will let you all go. And if my board members will please stick around for the executive session, I appreciate it. With that, good night.